Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
The Open Air Show with Tom Remington. This is the show that promises to deliver to you issues that matter.
He's liable to ask some direct questions.
You're locked in. Now, get ready for a thrilling ride. Were you born to be wild?
Good afternoon and welcome to an episode of Open Air with Tom Remington. And I'm Tom Remington. And I've got a new camera and a new system here that I'm working on. So bear with me if this isn't working quite the way that it ought to work. But we'll get the bugs out of it after a while. You know, today I was sitting here and I was doing a little thinking. And so I dug out this, which is the latest copy of The Outdoorsman, and the editor is George Dovell. Brilliant man. The guy is virtually never wrong in what he reports. And I was rereading this article in here about, it's called Beware of Another Idaho Wildlife Congress. And for those of you who may not be aware, I'll kind of, let's see, the Idaho Department of Fish and Game announced that it wanted to hold and they call it now, a wildlife summit, in which the purpose of it is to invite a bunch of people there and ask them what they want the Fish and Game Department to do. Okay. Let me set the stage of this wildlife summit in the article when the editor George Dovell writes, on June 16th, 2011, Idaho Department of Fish and Game Director Moore held a press conference and announced his intentions to hold another wildlife congress in August or September of 2012. His quote was, "Hunting has become a minority activity and it needs to be returned to an important and traditional activity." Okay, so when you combine that with the Wildlife Summit, who in this article says the purpose has been changed to ask the majority who don't hunt or support conservation with their dollars what they want the agency to provide. Now, the first question I have is, who hires these morons? The Department of Fish and Game, yes, over the years it's trying to be forced away from the management of surplus game for harvest by the environmentalists, who pay absolutely nothing for the conservation services provided by supposedly the Department of Fish and Game, and it's paid for almost completely by license fees and excise taxes paid by the sportsmen. So inviting all of these, okay, let's cut to the chase, inviting all these environmentalists as stakeholders to this wildlife summit is akin to let's decide what the new rules for baseball are going to be next year, and let's invite all the volleyball players. Let's invite all the fans who watch the game, who don't have a nickel in it, and let them decide what the rules of baseball are, which also include ownership, how the owners will manage their players and stuff. does anybody not see how ridiculous this is? Where I assume that in Idaho the wildlife fish and game department director is appointed by the governor. Well, what is the governor doing? Obviously, Governor Butch Otter must be an environmentalist himself who has no understanding of what his own fish and game department is supposed to do, and he's caved in to the environmentalists, obviously, by giving Fish and Game the authority to go ahead and hold this wildlife summit and invite all these non-hunters and users of the resource, if you will, to this meeting. There's well, let me go back before I do this. I want to go back and I want to read the very beginning part of this article that George Dole wrote. That kind of sets the stage to give you a better understanding from a historic perspective what one might expect at a new wildlife summit in Idaho. The article begins this way. On November 19th and 20th, 1988, then IDFG, I'll use that for Idaho Department of Fish and Game, Director Jerry Conley and the Idaho Wildlife Federation, IWF, hosted a lopsided assortment of environmental activists and natural resource users in a two-day, quote, Idaho Wildlife Congress. Then, as now, the published excuse for the elaborate gathering was to give all the stakeholders in Idaho's wildlife the opportunity to provide input into future management. But those of us who attended, representing licensed sportsmen, loggers, farmers, or livestock owners, soon learned we had walked into a stacked deck. Following the introductory remarks, we were asked to sit at individual tables in small groups where we could discuss issues. But each consumptive resource user was carefully seated at a table with one or more outspoken environmental activists and IDFG ushers, by IDFG ushers. I've been to these same meetings, and it really ticks me off. You divide up into these, what do they call these groups? I forget what it is. It's this touchy-feely human interaction, things where you're lied to and led to believe that you're all going to sit together and talk like human beings and resolve and compromise everything to achieve some results. When it's a stacked deck, as Mr. Dovell alludes to. As soon, I'm back to reading the article, as soon as one of us began discussing the conservation and wise use of natural resource, one of the activists quickly warned the others seated at our table that our comments indicated we were pursuing a private agenda which had nothing to do with conservation. With about 900 individuals attending the session, resource users were greatly outnumbered, even with IWF and other traditional IDFG sportsman groups, support groups in attendance. During the first afternoon, virtually all of the legitimate resource users headed back home in disgust. In the nearly 9 years since Director Joe Greenlee retired and Conley was hired to replace him, evidence of Conley's non-consumptive agenda was everywhere. And then Mr. Dovell goes through the next part of his article and presents important wildlife management strategies that changed due to this lopsided wildlife summit, in which those who don't pay a nickel into it get to say how it's done, and it's ridiculous. This isn't just an Idaho problem. It's all over the country. We hear it all the time, everywhere we go. Matter of fact, in Maine, and that's my home state, and I cover a lot of what goes on there with the Fish and Game Department as well. But we have quite a few members of the hunting community that are actually on the side of these environmentalists. They're so blinded, by their crap that they can't see that they're having what it is that they like to do taken away from them by these people who don't believe in what to do. They lie to you and tell you, oh yes, we support hunting, but they don't, and because everything that they do is a war against it. And and going along with that, the other lame thing that always gets tossed out there is, well, we got to do something, and the only way we can do something is compromise. And compromise is really a filthy, dirty word, because people don't understand what compromise is and when it should and should not be used. I think it was Gandhi who talked about compromise, and he said something like, all compromise is based on give and take, and but you can't all compromise is based on give and take, but you can't give when it involves fundamentals. When you compromise your fundamentals, that's surrender, okay? And wildlife management historically has an amazing track record for its accomplishments. It's extremely fundamental. It's very basic, it's proven, it's tested. The data is there, the history is there to show that it works, and it's important. And these environmentalists have infiltrated from all aspects on this. They've brainwashed our kids in school and college, and they're coming out of there with these ideas and thoughts that are no more based in scientific fact than that horses fly, and we're just sitting there. It's a classic example here in Idaho where the director is inviting. He thinks that these environmental groups are representative of the outdoor sportsmen, of hunters and fishermen and that sort of stuff. That's what he thinks, and so he thinks inviting them there is a good thing, and it's not a good thing. So I believe that at the end here, George Dovell has a couple of short paragraphs to say how to get elected officials to listen. And it's to listen that this wildlife summit, as it's set up, is no good, and it will just further erode and destroy the good, solid conservation and wildlife management that has been used for years and is being destroyed even as we speak. Mr. Dovell says, insist that Director Moore provide you state and federal code sections that allow him to facilitate a wish list from citizens who do not pay for the non-consumptive freebies they already enjoy. The wish list, he's referring to the Wildlife Summit, in which their goal is to get these people to create this so-called a wish list of what they would like the Fish and Game Department to be doing other than their jobs. He said, even a temporary injunction to halt the summit might make IDFG and your elected officials think twice about letting them steal more money intended to restore wildlife, not to restore wildlife, not destroy it. Frequently remind urban newspapers and radio and TV reporters that a February 18, 2009 report from Assistant Idaho Department of Fish and Game Director Kiefer to Senator Schrader admitted declining elk numbers were costing Idaho up to $24 million in lost annual revenue just for fewer non-resident elk hunters. They're just not coming to the state. The goal here by these environmentalists, make no mistake about it, their goal is to destroy, to stop hunting, to stop fishing, to stop trapping. And if you think otherwise, I feel bad for you, because you have no brain, you've lost all of your ability to think independently, and you can't even see the forest for the trees. Okay? So that's my rant, and I would encourage, I'm not in Idaho, and some will argue it's none of my business because I'm not a resident there. But this sort of crap affects every outdoor sportsman in the United States of America, and I'm going to do what I can do to stop this foolishness, because I don't want to see these same types of summits take place in other states and even my own home state. So that's my rant for today, and I'm glad you took the time to join in, and we'll see you next time on Open Air with Tom Remington.